Divorce him already, Usha. That's the title of an opinion piece published on Salon.com. It was written by Amanda Marcotte. I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. And it's a reflection on essentially this theory that JD Vance, the vice president, and his wife Usha hate each other. The subtitle is JD Vance and his wife really seem to loathe each other. I think this is one of the grossest things about the media, that they would be rooting for a young couple with young children's divorce, but also telling you, speculating about Michelle and Barack Obama's divorce is bad. Furthermore, I think that we should be a pro-marriage culture and not a divorce from spite culture. So I want to talk about this a little bit. I don't think that they loathe each other, but you guys weigh in. Let me know. Do the Vances hate each other? Are they headed for divorce? So at the start of the Trump administration, I did a video on this rumor that Melania Trump was going to not live at the White House. There were all these articles titled, Melania Trump finally reveals where she's going to live. And in one line of an interview, the first lady said, I'm going to live with my husband at the White House. And when we need to be in Florida, we'll be there. And when we need to be in New York, we'll be there. Because for years now, even though they don't want to embrace her, the media is always telling us that Melania hates Donald Trump and she's about to leave him. She's unhappy. She only cares about the money. She's always negotiating her prenup. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. And it seemed like this was sort of the last breath effort the last ditch effort because Barron, their son, was now in college. So it was as if Melania Trump was going to be like a first lady abroad and be avoiding Donald Trump. That's never been the case from what I understand. She doesn't even like to spend very many nights apart from Donald Trump. But if you wanted to know if the left-wing media thought that JD Vance was a serious threat, here's the evidence. They are now rumor-mongering that Usha Vance will leave him. JD Vance and Usha Vance met at Yale Law School. He's talked openly and warmly about their relationship. He referred to her as his best friend. I just don't think that this is the case that they think they're making. But in the piece on Salon.com, they refer to quotes that apparently she says that that they fight, that she doesn't want her life to be like that. They refer to an interview where they said that she looks exhausted and tired. I don't know if that's how I perceive that interview.
Do you mind if I ask a little bit about your love story?
Sure.
Because everybody's interested. So you met your husband at Yale. And I just want to know, I know I saw an interview, you said you were friends first. I also read in his book that he said, I love you first. When you first met him, can you just tell me a little bit about like your first meeting and how it turned romantic, Mrs. Vance?
Of course. So the first meeting would have been in the library. I think I've told people about this before, where we were just on a tour of the library together and we met all the people who were in our classes together. And that I barely remember because, it was a tour. There was just this flood of information and I was really focused on that. But I think we were really lucky that we got to know each other in the best possible setting. We had all our classes together. It was just a really lovely social environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I just knew of him as one of the people who kind of held that group together, our small group that was going from class to class to class. Everyone really liked him. He was funny. He, didn't take everything too seriously. He was just obviously really good friend material right off the bat. And so I was drawn to him for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that persisted for quite some time. And it really was when he, later on in our second semester, when he started to talk more about where he was from and what made him this kind of person who I just found so appealing, that I started to think of him in this different way, as something other than a friend, but one of the more interesting people I'd ever met in my life.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I think that's what kind of set us on the path towards dating and eventual marriage.
So there are a couple major allegations in this piece about why the Vance's marriage would be on the rocks. The first would be that she doesn't like being involved in the administration. She doesn't like being, in the presidency. I could understand where it's a big change, although maybe not as big a change as it would be for, let's say, a governor's wife who got to live at home. She was married to a senator before this. I think she's familiar with D.C. Yes, Secret Service and having to live in the Naval Observatory and extra concern about, your children's safety and privacy in childhood. Like, that doesn't seem that crazy, but it also doesn't seem like they are at odds about it. I mean, in the clips of JD Vance, when they were saying he runs weird, like he said, I was playing with my children. Like, we are trying to go on vacation. It doesn't seem like she's off, whisking them away from their father because there's actually marital tension. I wouldn't blame her if she found becoming the second lady challenging, but I don't think that there's any evidence that has like sparked some sort of a fire between them. I don't get this at all. So this is where Salon's opinion piece moves into the more serious allegation, which is basically she's of Indian immigrant parents, and JD Vance is speaking more openly about restricting immigration, and that's why she hates him. I'm going to read you a quote. So the author says that JD Vance sort of disparages his wife in public. He jokes at her expense and she doesn't like this. I don't really see the complaint. I think this is a little bit of a reach for me, but, that would be an inappropriate thing for a husband to do. So the author writes, but the most disturbing example to me is how he used his speech at last year's Republican National Convention to celebrate how he was erasing her very identity in marrying her. I listened to this speech. It was right after he was named vice president. I don't think that's what he was doing. In fact, I know that despite being a Catholic, they also had a Hindu ceremony at their wedding. So it seems like he has embraced her culture, but okay. The quote goes on, Vance was trying to square Trump's hostility to non-white immigrants with the fact that Vance himself is married to the daughter of Indian immigrants. He argued, quote, when we allow newcomers into our American family, we allow them on our terms, end quote. He then proceeded to spell out his terms by talking about how he proposed marriage by talking up how his, quote, cemetery plot in eastern Kentucky is near his family's ancestral home, end quote, and how she and her kids would be buried with, quote, 7 generations just in a small mountain plot cemetery, end quote. The implication wasn't subtle. Usha Vance is expected to subsume her South Asian identity to his family's whiteness, as well as her husband's blood and soil idea of what makes someone American. So he's not allowed to want his family to be buried in his ancestral graveyard, which he visited before becoming being inaugurated as vice president, because then he's racist. This seems crazy to me. And I'm sure, as her parents, like all immigrant families, have to have this conversation about end of life planning. This is something that's traditional to him. I don't think it's offensive to her. I could be wrong, because apparently just by saying he wants his family to be buried together in a sentimental place to him, he's a bad guy. I don't think this would be erasing her identity. In fact, I assume it would be racist if his family was like, no, JD, you can't have your non-white wife be buried here. Like, this seems wrong to me. I do think it's interesting that his family is from an impoverished region of the country, and that is a big part of his identity. I mean, Hillbilly Elegy sold thousands and thousands of copies. There's a movie of it. People are interested and feel a connection to this part of the story. Of course, he would talk about it when he was becoming the vice presidential nominee. I also think that she has heard all of his speeches. I don't think someone who refers to this woman as his best friend, who praises his grandmother for raising him, who obviously has respect for the women in his life, would be like, I'm going to write this thing even though you obviously don't like it and it's something we're fighting about over. Like, they obviously have talked about this way before he was about to become vice presidency. I don't think this is an issue. Again, why is the media rooting for this family's divorce? They want their 3 young children to have to divide their time between a vice president father and a mother who's back in Ohio or in California with her family? Like, why do we want the demise of families? Why is this the reaction? And it seems like so often it weaves into this bigger deal, which is the idea for feminists that divorce is how women liberate themselves from oppressive men. I don't think that's true. I think divorce hurts a lot of people. There may be some cases where it's necessary to preserve your safety or your children's safety, but trying to pressure Usha Vance with your opinion piece into leaving her husband because you think they might not get along based on the fact that you never liked her husband is kind of ridiculous. I'm sure everyone who's listening knows someone who's dating someone that they're like, yeah, I don't care for them. But if it makes you happy, I'm not in the relationship. As long as you don't sense danger, which it doesn't seem like there's any sense of danger in the Vance family, why are you complaining about this? really, you don't like JD Vance's politics and you're offended that a non-white woman who's married to him would tolerate them, would even go on to support Donald Trump and the administration. Not that she's the craziest vocal Trump supporter, but I guess by, doing second lady's duties, she's offending. She's not doing what she's supposed to do as a, I don't know, token Democrat. This seems very belittling to Usha Vance to me, who, by all accounts, has handled herself with grace in a very complicated and uncharted territory for her. So anyways, I just think this opinion piece is kind of sad. I think that it's weird that they are making this a bigger issue than it is. I mean, here's another quote. It's also telling that JD Vance seems to think that marriage and parenthood should be mandatory for nearly everyone. He speaks of these choices so often in terms of duty, as if he can't imagine either being undertaken out of joy. A mere 7 years into his marriage, Vance argued people should be, quote, doggedly determined to stick it out in marriage, no matter if that's, quote, unhappy or even violent. I think they are misquoting him here, but, I'm just a simpleton, I guess. Despite his claims that, quote, childless cat ladies are, quote, miserable, it's not hard to notice the protest too much quality of his obsession with single or childless people. He keeps insisting that the childless are, quote, sociopathic, painting them as selfish, hedonists, all in a tone of barely concealed envy. Ma'am, are you arguing that JD Vance, who praises his wife, who talks about his kids constantly, is envious of childless people? I think this is like your own protest too much. I think this is you saying he clearly is unhappy. Being a parent is difficult. It takes up a lot of time. It changes your life. But it's very clear to me that, he enjoys it and that she enjoys it too, that they make their children and their family the center of the things that they do. I think a lot of people would enjoy that. And I'm sorry that you feel as though marriage and parenthood are, some kind of burden. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that probably someone who's happy about it would want other people to do that too. It's not that he's protesting too much. It's that he wishes this for other people because he enjoys it. It seems to be the argument is JD Vance is a Republican, so that's bad. And JD Vance is anti-illegal immigration, possibly interested in restricting immigration, so that's bad. And finally, JD Vance is a straight man, and that's why Usha Vance should leave him. I'm going to read this final quote. The concept of, quote, compulsory heterosexuality was coined in 1980 by lesbian theorist Adrienne Rich, who described how women were pushed to sleep only with men, whether they wanted to or not. But, as she said herself, even straight people can get something out of it. On the right, especially, there's this notion that being married is something that you have to endure rather than enjoy. They speak of men and women as complete opposites, people who have nothing in common, but are forced by an apparent merciless God to live together anyways. I think this person has never talked to anyone who's both conservative and married. I think that this is really pushing your fear of marriage down someone else's throat. And like I said, projecting your desire that women should be away from men onto Usha Vance. Yes, marriage is challenging at times, but also it's a lifelong commitment. And I think when people talk about enduring, sticking it out, that's what they're talking about. Not giving up when you decide you've changed or you don't like it. About growing together and building something with someone else. I think that's beautiful and enduring. And I don't understand why this has to be these crazy straight people. They're just trying to suffer through because they have a God that hates them. Like, none of this seems realistic, and it really seems like a very disgusting projection onto Usha Vance, who didn't ask for this. Actually, she's just being the best wife she can by supporting someone she loves very much. And I think we should applaud her for that. Stop divorce mongering the Vances. Anyways, that's my take on this. Let me know what you think. If you think the Vances are about to divorce, tell me. I mean, I know people talk about the fact that they're not the same religion, and that can be a problem. But I don't think it's because he's a hateful Republican and a straight man. I think that they're happier than this person would like to believe. Thanks so much for the support. I'll have a new video out soon. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It makes a really big difference to me. And I can't wait to read your comments. I'd love your take on the Vance's marriage.